All right. Does anyone have a spiritual thought? It's one of the options to meet. My ward, I'm over the young men and duty to God. And last Sunday, I challenged them to read the Book of Mormon and see it. And I asked them how fast they want to do it. And they said 30 days. So I've been joining along in that read. It's pretty intense. But I actually like it because you get to hear the story all the way through, back to back. So I definitely recommend, if you guys want to read the Book of Mormon, you guys can do it. I did it during my commute, and I actually just listened to it. And there's an option, because the reading is fairly slow. If you play it at regular speed, you can actually up the speed to either 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 speed, and you can actually still understand it. So it's pretty nice.
I didn't know that.
All right, getting down to the case, Quincy Apparel in December 12th. Describe the two options the founders are debating in the summary. Any thoughts on that?
Seems to me like the main thing that they're debating is whether to keep as many sizes available or to kind of close down the business.
Yeah, we got Nelson, who's really pushing for them to hold off, like reduce the different sizes, because they just have too many and they have too much inventory, and it's killing them on their stock. It's just sitting there. Where you have Wallace, who says, that's the main reason why we went into business and we're doing so well, is because we're offering different sizes that most of these women can't get. So that's the battle, at least that I've seen. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that actually it was necessary for them to reduce the amount of sizes for the clothing. But anyways, Wallace is right, because, that's what makes the Quincy Apparel different to any other company. However, they didn't need as much sizes as they had, so they could lower the amount of sizes and still offer like this specific feature to the main in the market. But they actually needed to reduce the number of sizes, or there were two options: reduce the number of sizes, or keep the same number of sizes and close the company, because they wouldn't be able to sustain all the inventory and everything.
Yeah, it's asking what's at stake with this decision, and that's just it. It's either you fold up shop because you just can't handle the orders, the returns, and all that stock, or you somehow get the funds you needed to carry you over until the sales start picking up again. So it's asking us to vote Wallace or Nelson.
I vote Nelson.
Nelson too.
Nelson as well.
Yeah.
Remember, Nelson's the one who has the background in inventory optimization when she was working for BCG. So she already knows, inventory pretty well, and she's recommending that they reduce those sizes.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely go with her.
And what I would basically, the reason I think they should go with her is if you look at Exhibit 7A, I think that pretty much answers the question. They can target the top 3 segments of traditionalists, rising stars, and trend seekers, and they can stop focusing on the fit skeptics who are the ones they were trying to focus on, and it kind of looks like the fit skeptics are the cause of all their problems. They're getting the lowest amount of average order with them. They're only ordering like once a year, and they are the ones returning 85% of the time. And that's 22% of their customers. You kind of just cut that out. Your percent of people returning clothing goes way down. Your average orders will probably go up if you're focusing more on the other 3 as well.
Yeah, and they said that was the only segment that was not making money. All the other segments were making money.
And that's kind of what Christina wants to focus on, right? Is the fit skeptics.
Yeah.
So her vision is maybe it's a good idea, but it's not a profitable idea. And maybe they can use it later on down the road, like Alex said. Like once we're more established, we can focus maybe more on them. Once we have like operational processes down, but right now it's just not. It won't work.
No, I agree. Yeah, Alex didn't say let's cancel that altogether. She just let's hold off on producing so many varying sizes, and we'll get back to it later. So, you know, it's a conservative approach, but a wise one at the same time. How do you think they should approach the board meeting that they're supposed to go to the next day? I think they need to be on the same page. I think that's first and foremost. Otherwise, you know, people are going to see the contention and they're not going to be. They're not going to want to be a part of it.
Let's say, does Alex really want to be at the company? If she needs to realize that, or I mean, Christina, does she really want to be at the company? If she's not, she said this is kind of the whole point we did the company, and you're like, well, that's not going to work to be successful.
Yeah, they definitely need to be unified on the direction that they're headed. Because if they don't have a plan, board's not gonna. They're not gonna approve what they want to do or be on board with what they want to do. So I would say, come in unified, and also be very. They're not going to be able to hide anything. The board's going to have all the information, so they need to be very upfront with, yes, we've lost money here, 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 and here, but here's our plan to go forward. We need to raise money, and we're on the same page. So this is what we're going to do. If they just go to the board and are looking for a bailout from the board on how they move things forward, or even to help them compromise, it's not going to be a good thing. They're going to say you need to close up shop and try to get the investors' money back.
Do you think current investors should make this loan? Or why they should make this loan?
I mean,
Well, actually, they.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so actually, they needed money because otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford the what is it? The summer? No.
Spring.
The spring session, the spring collection. So I think they had just enough money to afford the next 7 weeks. They needed money to produce the product, the clothing for the spring collection, and without the money, without the investment, it wouldn't be possible for Quincy to remain on the market.
Yeah. I mean, if I was on the investing side of things, and I would be really hesitant to reinvest in these guys. You know what I mean? Especially, what they've been through, and there was just some problems that came up that they were, they weren't planning for them, and they just didn't. There was kind of a little bit of lack of knowledge when it came down to the fabrics and I feel like they didn't really have a good relationship with like a factory to manufacture their clothing, but also they didn't have a good relationship with like the fabric companies and things like that, and there was just a lot of different things that added up. So I mean, I don't know if I would reinvest in these guys. You know what I mean?
It would, if I was an investor, it would be. We're going to end up talking about it later. What do they need to do to succeed? But I think it would depend for me on the answers that they give for how they plan on moving the company forward. If they plan on being unified, I actually think they kind of need to get out of the way and hire somebody else who's a project manager to be able to make the decisions. But as an investor, I'm looking at the potential to not get my money back. And if I can invest a little bit of money, I'd want to look at their projections and see, what that actually looked like. But I think a lot of their issues, to me, are kind of one-time issues. They didn't understand that they needed to fully vet the material, that they needed to have quality control at different segments of the operation, not just with the patterns. They had to have it with the patterns. They had to have it with the samples and with the materials and everything. So I think a lot of the mistakes that they made, they've probably, like the major ones, they've already made, and they can take care of those. So it would really depend on what their attitude was and how how they saw the future kind of playing out.
Do you think the investor should find the founders?
Was that part of the case? I saw that question and I didn't see. I mean, is that an option? I mean, I did.
I don't remember seeing that either.
I don't know why you would fine them. I mean, I feel like a fine is something more if you do like maybe unethical or illegal. I don't feel like they did something like that. Maybe I'm wrong.
To be honest with you, I'm sorry for that, but I don't really understand what fine means in this context.
So fine means to charge them a penalty. So like if you were fined, it's like in sports, if you have like a major unsportsmanlike conduct, the organization can fine you for it, which means they're going to charge you money for the bad thing that you did.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Do you think in sense of like shares, or maybe a percentage increase?
Are they? I can't remember. What's their salary? Are they making a salary?
I didn't even see that. No, I don't see anything.
Me neither.
Doesn't really talk about that.
I mean, it would depend if both of them are sitting kind of fat, dumb, and happy, making $400,000 a year, and they're making these mistakes. I'd say, yeah, let's cut their salaries. But I would maybe make it more of a lower base salary with targets for production, because their net profit margins well below what their target is for the investors to do their next round of funding anyways.
Yeah, I like that. Pay cut sounds more appropriate than fine. Oh, I mean, we don't know how much they're making, but that seems the way to go.
So basically, if they don't do the focus on fitting people, do they basically are becoming like a rent the runaway type place?
I don't think that they need to deviate too much. I mean, they've, even from their initial idea, so they had, okay, we're going to increase the measurement areas, right? Mm-hmm. Then they increased that again. So they've already expanded what they were planning on doing. So I don't think it's even like mission drift if they were to just go back and say, okay, rather than just, waist size, we'll do waist size and length and whatever. I think they can reduce their inventory, and they can, by just reducing the number of measurements, and still be above the industry standard. So they can still keep their competitive advantage or what their mission is without really, and save money, reduce their expenses by not having so much inventory.
They just made it really complicated with all the different measurements.
Yeah, and they, like I said, they increased it. They were doing just a couple of measurements, and then they added like straight or curvy, and then they added some other things. So they kept just tacking on to where it looks like they're pretty much custom making clothing for every person who makes an order, and that's not. I mean, that's not the model that they're in.
That's probably why that 22% always return their clothes too.
Yep.
I did like how they kind of had with their trunk cases or shows that they had kind of like a prototype, and that they could do quick alterations on an order. So they have the general standard, but if they needed it cuffed or hemmed, they could do that on the spot and then send it out. Which I think if they did that, just had a handful of ones that are going to sell. I mean, they have to get feedback on their sales. They got to know what they're pushing out, who's buying, and what the typical or the general sizes are, whatever the majority is, and then just work off of that. Another question is, we kind of talked about how did Quincy end up in this predicament. I think you're right. It's just a little bit of a snowball. Little things here and there that they could have tweaked. It does ask, does Quincy have a solid technology and operations strategy?
Apparently not if it's not working.
No. Well, I think their biggest kind of mistake that they made is they didn't understand operations to begin with. Because I think they talked about quality control, and they thought, oh yeah, we'll just inspect the end product. But the problem is they needed to inspect like 3 different segments, and each segment, like the pattern maker and then the sample maker and then the end product, they needed to inspect quality at each step, and they didn't understand that at all. And no one person was responsible for the end product. So I think operations was their biggest fault.
Yeah, I would say that their operations section was like a mess. In their marketing as well. I mean, everything. And it's not that they were like bad business people, but they didn't custom a well-crafted business plan. They didn't have a business plan. They were just flying with their ideas and doing everything, but they didn't plan how the production section was going to be, and the marketing one as well. They didn't really knew their they didn't really know their customers, their needs, were willing to buy, you know. So it was just, I think it was a lack of planning in the business plan.
Yeah, it also said they thought they could manage and design the production themselves, and then there's that whole story where they waited 2 weeks, and then the quote went up more than 50% of their original bid. So the factory managers were just walking all over them too.
A red flag always goes in my head anytime I hear that they hired family, and I think her brother's a software developer. I mean, I don't know how well he did and did not do, but sometimes I worry when you hire family when you could have hired a professional, which it sounds like they needed more professionals in the business. What did they have to do really well to succeed? I think we touched on that.
I think operations is their biggest struggle, and they need to get on the same page. Their lack of unity it's going to continue to be a problem.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good and bad thing. They said their friendship over the business, right? If they were ever to get in an argument, that they would make sure that they remain friends.
They said that at the beginning. Easier said than done, though.
Yeah. Especially when you have all those investors, that are relying on you. You can't just be like, well, we're best of friends, so sorry about your money. You know, your loss.
Well, and it's kind of foolish to believe that you're going to agree on everything to begin with. Like, I mean, I have some pretty good friends that I work with, and we still don't agree on everything. So, at least where I work, I'm running my own portfolio and they're running theirs, and they can do what they want. But if there was like a single portfolio that we had to manage and we had to do it unanimously, it would never get done. Nothing would ever work. I mean, 80% of the time it would be okay, but that 20% could kill the whole thing.
You end up coming to a vote for some of them, like majority rules, or it just
I don't know what they would do. So for me, I don't have to worry about that. I essentially run my own business, so I can do what I want to do, and I don't have to listen to anybody else. But if somebody was telling me what I had to do, it wouldn't work. You can't have. It just reminds me of The Office. Like, if one manager's good, two's better, right? And that doesn't ever work out.
I like that. It says to compare to RTR.
Rent the Runway.
Oh, that's what that stood for.
Yeah.
I was like, like return total. No.
Hey,
I guess RTR, they may Rent the Runaway. From what I remember, I don't feel like they allowed their operations or technology to get in a bad spot. Like there were times where it kind of slowed down, but they made it a priority to make sure that it was fixed. They made sure they had the right people on board. I think that was a big thing too. Is the people they hired, they made some bad decisions. I felt like Rent the Runaway was going out of their way to make sure that they had the right people on board.
I think they're in different areas too. So Rent the Runway wasn't. It almost looked like Quincy was initially going to be more like Rent the Runway because they were just going to look for companies that made the sizes they want. But then they said, "Oh, well, we can make these on our own and be okay." So Quincy's operations are a lot more broad. They're producing the product and trying to sell it, rather than just trying to have somebody else worry about production and then them sell it. So I think they're different arms of the same business, same type of business. I actually think that if Quincy teamed up with Rent the Runway, they could have a pretty good business if they just focused on production and let Rent the Runway worry about sales.
that's interesting. Possible merger.
Yep.
It says to look at Exhibit 6 and then talk about the cash flow. Was it good in your opinion? Looking at the net sales.
That was Exhibit 6, you said?
Yeah, Exhibit 6.
Now, is this a
It's in thousands.
1,000?
Yeah.
So this is is this a forecast or actuals? So it has actuals and the forecast?
Yeah, the first part is actual, and then it goes into forecast.
That's a hockey. What do they call it? The hockey stick forecast. Like we're gonna make $400. I mean $4,000, and then we're gonna make like 100% more in like 4 years.
Yeah, that's pretty radical. That's pretty dramatic. Or drastic.
Doesn't make much sense really. Like the cost of sales.
That's so expensive.
Yeah, I don't know how they expect their net margin to more than double. Usually, as you sell more, your margins get smaller.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because you need to invest in more equipment, and inventory's higher, and
More labor,
more labor.
more returns.
Yeah, but then again, like I feel like they probably feel like they weren't, they're not very efficient right now, and as things get better, they might become more efficient, which might be higher margins. But I feel like in the clothing industry, it's hard to have high margins, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of trends, and I mean, they even talked about how they wanted a different look. They didn't want just black suits. They wanted,
Yeah.
and when you get like that, you can't really tailor too much with the fabric you're working with. That's too much. You have to be ahead of the trends to be successful or be the trendsetter. It's really hard to do.
Mhm.
Were the founders a good fit?
I don't know. I think that they are a good fit. I mean, in the beginning, they would say, okay, if we don't have a conscience, like if we don't agree with something, we're not just gonna go ahead. Um, I think they are a good fit. It's just that they have, like in this point of the case, they have an important, different point of view, a different perspective. But I think they're willing to give up some things, and they're willing to help the other one. I mean, to help each other to find success. They have the same willingness to find success. But the thing is that Wallace is so stubborn, you know.
I agree. How about the teams? Or sorry, how about the team in general? Any thoughts on the investors or the partners?
I was gonna say with the investors, I can see why they felt the investors that were going with them made sense, because they had invested in like the similar companies. Wasn't there like like a makeup one or something? It was just like a similar concept, but I guess in reality, makeup and clothing is a lot different. I think that's what it was.
So, do you think if you had 6 months more of cash, do you think you could fix Quincy? I would say it's more not so much the funds as it is the operations. I think you can cut back and save more on the operations and have it run more efficiently than to worry about getting more money and, you know, going down the same path with a bad operation. You're just gonna shoot yourself in the foot later down the road.
I think in 6 months, if their spring collection works, I think that it could be fixed, because the spring collection will carry them. Well, they'll start collecting revenue. So there's September. So they'll start collecting revenue prior to their 6 months worth of cash running out, and that'll give them another bit of time to figure out their fall collection or whatever their next collection is. And I think that they'd be able to rectify a lot of the problems that they've had with operations and expenses, and figure out what needs to happen between Wallace and Ellison.
you guys had a chance, it has a case link. Let's see here. So, I haven't had a chance to read what happened. Has anyone read it already?
I didn't.
Case.
Yeah, the case.
I
Yeah,
didn't read
skimmed
it.
over
Sorry, what was that?
I was just gonna say I skimmed over it.
Anything that sticks out? It says.
To me, it kind of felt like just kind of a reflective thing of what they kind of would have done differently, the things they pointed out that were wrong. Like they recognize, I think Wallace kind of saw that they made things too complicated, and they talked about. Someone brought up like the family part, how the kind of the family aspect kind of made things tough on the dynamics between the leadership.
Let me read the last two paragraphs on founding another startup. Nelson admitted that failure had made her more risk averse and less forgiving of her new ventures, business model challenges. She was torn about whether she would ever find another startup. She thought her skills might lie in managing operations and technology for later stage ventures, for example, Series A or Series B startups. Wallace would definitely consider founding another startup. However, she would seek a venture where she had more domain expertise, could avoid a 50-50 equity split. Even a symbolic 51 to 49 would be better, and would only require outside capital for scaling. Once the concept had traction, in a book chapter on learning from failure, she said, "Despite everything, I don't regret a thing. I learned about more than I thought possible in 2 years. Fashion and retail, manufacturing, supply chains, hiring and firing, angel and venture capital deals, pitch decks, content marketing, branding, sales, and grit. My values, my breaking point. It was trial by fire, and I'm better off for it." So, it looks like it definitely, they had to close up shop, but some growing pains in the process. All right. What would you say the top takeaways are? I'm asking for 3.
Okay, I think planning. You have to plan what you want to do, you know? I mean, if you're gonna request investments, um, if you're gonna launch something like that big, dude, you gotta plan what you're expecting and uh, how you're gonna solve possible issues, the production section, the marketing section. I mean, everything, the research and development section. You know, I think that for me the most important thing is planning the business plan.
I think that needs to be fairly specific too, not just planning, but they need to look at the operations and consult with somebody that's in the operations to make sure that they really know what they're getting into. I mean, they made a lot of mistakes that I think anybody who had done any type of clothing manufacturing would have said, "Oh yeah, you're gonna fall down here, here, and here if you don't have these things in place." I mean, they could have just talked to somebody and probably got the information they needed.
Yeah, I think that's another takeaway is expertise. I think they were lacking in the experience that they needed, and they should have just turned to a mentor or got some kind of hard facts to plan for the future. I think the last thing is probably just pivot. If they see something not working, make a small pivot or change.
Yeah.
So it's working again, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
real fixated on where they were going, and I don't think they were willing to make the changes necessary, even if they were slight. They got ahead of themselves, I feel.
They were trying to force what they wanted in the company, and then they let things go haywire because of it. And then our group assignments on this document too, right?
Yeah, I put it on the second page.
I was say because I could not get access to our one last week.
That was my fault. I apologize for that.
Oh no, you're good. It's my fault. I didn't look at it until Saturday morning.
So that's good for the case, for a group discussion. We can kind of talk about our actual group assignment. I don't know if you guys are on that page.
Yeah, in fact, we could probably stop recording and just kind of knock it out right now.
Sounds good. I will stop the broadcast.